The champagne glass slipped from the tray and shattered at his feet, and the whole room went quiet, all at once, the way rooms do when something expensive breaks near someone important. Rowan Sinclair didn't move. He stood in the middle of the atrium of the Calgary Petroleum Club, surrounded by men in suits who all suddenly found their cufflinks very interesting, and he looked down at the mess on his shoes. Italian leather, dark cognac, probably cost more than Madeline's rent, and then he looked up. She hadn't run. That was the first thing he noticed. Every other server at these events, the moment something went wrong, they turned themselves small, apologetic, practically invisible. This one stood there with the empty tray against her hip and met his eyes like she was waiting for him to say something worth hearing. "Those are Ferragamos," Rowan said. "I can see that," said Madeleine Voss. Someone behind him stifled a laugh. Rowan wasn't sure if it was at him or that bothered him more than the shoes. He reached for a cocktail napkin from a passing tray. A different server, one who moved fast and kept his eyes down like a sensible person, and handed it to her without a word. She looked at the napkin. She looked at him. She didn't take it. "You want me to clean your shoes," she said. "It wasn't a question. I want you to do your job. My job is to carry drinks, not to kneel on marble in front of a room full of oil executives." She tilted her head slightly. "With respect." The two words landed like a period at the end of something much longer. Rowan Sinclair had not been spoken to like that since his second year at Queen's University, when his economics professor had told him that confidence without competence was just noise. He hadn't liked it then either, but he had remembered it for 20 years. He looked at this woman. Really looked. She was maybe 28, 29, with dark hair pulled back in a way that was practical rather than pretty, and she had the kind of stillness that people only have when they've had to learn to be still. "Her name tag," said Madeleine. "You're not afraid of me," he said. "Should I be?" He almost smiled. He didn't. "Most people are. Most people need something from you." She bent down and picked up the largest pieces of broken glass herself, placing them on her tray with the kind of careful efficiency that said she'd cleaned up other people's messes before. "I just need to get through my shift." The circle of people around them had grown. Someone had a phone out. Rowan could feel it without looking. He had been in enough rooms, at enough events, long enough, to know when a moment was becoming a story someone would tell tomorrow. This was one of those moments. He had maybe 30 seconds before it tipped from awkward to memorable, and the difference between those two things was entirely up to him. So he said the thing that surprised even him. "Can you play chess?" Madeleine paused, a shard of glass held between two fingers. "What? Chess?" He gestured toward the corner of the room where a decorative board had been set up on a side table, an affectation of the club, something to signal intellectual refinement between the oil paintings and the brandy. "There's a board over there. I'm told it's for decoration, but the pieces are real." She stood slowly. "You want to play chess, right now, with me. You walked into my event, ruined my shoes, and insulted me in front of 40 people, Rowan said, keeping his voice mild. "The least you can do is give me a chance to salvage my dignity. Your dignity seems pretty intact to me. Then you're not paying close enough attention." Something shifted in her expression. Not softness exactly. More like recalibration, the way a person looks when they're revising an assumption they made quickly. She glanced at her manager, a thin man near the bar who was watching with the stricken expression of someone watching a house fire from across the street, and then she looked back at Rowan. "One game," she said, "and when I win, you tip the entire staff double." The room exhaled. Rowan pulled out the chair. "When you win," he repeated. "When?" He didn't tip double. He tipped triple, because she won in 19 moves, and when he stared at the board afterward trying to find where he'd gone wrong, she simply said, "You protect your queen too early. It makes the rest of your game predictable." Then she picked up her tray and went back to work. He asked about her through the club's event coordinator the next morning. He told himself it was because he'd never lost a chess game at one of these functions before, and he didn't like not understanding things. He told himself it was professional curiosity. He was good at telling himself things. Her name was Madeleine Voss. 29, born in Medicine Hat. Graduated top of her cohort from the University of Calgary with a degree in mathematics, which explained the chess. She'd been in a graduate program, actuarial science, and had left 18 months ago. The coordinator didn't know why. She'd been picking up catering shifts and part-time tutoring since then, living in Kensington in a building that Rowan's company, Sinclair Capital, actually owned as part of a commercial portfolio. He did not think about that last part for very long. He thought about it briefly, though. He had her contacted through legitimate channels. His assistant called the catering agency, explained that the Sinclair Capital Holiday Gala in December required specific staff, and that Madeline Voss was requested by name. It was, Rowan told himself, simply a matter of continuity. She showed up to the gala in the same practical bun and the same expression of patient neutrality, saw him standing by the bar, and said, "You checked up on me. I required a specific server for the event. You required me specifically. You have relevant experience with your shoes." He handed her a glass of sparkling water, not champagne. He'd noted she didn't drink on shift, and said, "Your graduate program. Why did you leave?" She looked at him for a long moment. The gala hummed around them. String quartet, low lighting, the smell of cedar and expensive perfume. Then she said, "My mother got sick. I went home. When I came back, my funding had been reallocated." She said it the way you say true things that have been said enough times that they stop hurting as much. That's it. Not a very interesting story. It's a very unfair one. Lots of things are unfair. She adjusted her grip on the tray. Not everyone has a Ferragamo problem. He laughed. It came out before he could stop it, genuine and slightly startled, and a woman nearby turned to look because Rowan Sinclair was not known for laughing at galas. He was known for closing deals and making people nervous, and occasionally being photographed, leaving restaurants with women who were described in the captions as socialites or entrepreneurs. Madeline looked at him like the laugh was the most interesting thing he'd done yet. They talked for 11 minutes. He knew because he checked his watch when his CFO came to pull him away, and the number surprised him. He'd spoken to people at these events for 20 years and never timed a conversation before. He began engineering reasons to run into her. He was not proud of this. He also didn't stop. 3 weeks later, he walked into a coffee shop on 17th Avenue that he had no logical reason to be in, and found her at a corner table with a stack of actuarial textbooks and a pencil tucked behind her ear, tutoring a university student who looked like he hadn't slept since October. Rowan ordered a coffee, sat 2 tables away, opened his laptop, and did absolutely no work for 45 minutes. When the student left, she looked over at him without surprise. "You're following me," she said. "I'm working." "Your laptop is closed. I'm thinking." "About?" He looked at her. "About how someone who placed in the top 3% of her cohort ends up doing catering shifts." Madeline set her pencil down. "About how someone who built a $2 billion company still needs to manufacture coincidences to have a conversation." The coffee shop was warm and smelled like cinnamon and burned milk. Outside, a November wind was doing what November winds do in Calgary. Rowan looked at the actuarial textbooks, at the notes in the margins that were dense and precise, at the woman who had beaten him at chess in 19 moves, and still hadn't looked at him like he was someone she needed anything from. "Have dinner with me," he said. "No." "Why not?" "Because you're used to people saying yes to you, and I think it's made you sloppy." She picked up her pencil again. "And because I'm not interested in being someone's interesting deviation from routine." "That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" He didn't have an answer. That was new. "When you figure it out," Madeline said, not unkindly, "you can ask again." He figured it out, or something close to it, 6 weeks later, at a board meeting that had nothing to do with Madeline Voss and everything to do with what happened after. His ex-fiancée, Clarissa Drummond, sat across the table in her capacity as a partner at Drummond & Keel, the law firm that handled Sinclair Capital's acquisition contracts. She was polished and precise, and she looked at him with the practiced warmth of someone who had once known him very well and had since converted that knowledge into professional utility. They had been engaged for 14 months. The engagement had ended 18 months ago, quietly, by mutual agreement that had not felt mutual at the time. Clarissa now represented the family of a small Calgary tech firm that Sinclair Capital was attempting to acquire. The negotiation was civil, as negotiations between people with expensive lawyers always are. Afterward, in the elevator, she said, "I heard you've been spending time with someone. People talk. People who cater your events talk, specifically." She looked at the elevator doors. "She's not your type, Rowan. My type tends to leave." Clarissa absorbed this without flinching, which was something he'd always respected about her. "Just be careful. You have a way of deciding what people should be and then being surprised when there's something else." He thought about that for a long time. He thought about it when he asked Madeline to dinner again. Properly this time, at a small French place in Inglewood that wasn't a statement restaurant, just somewhere good, and she said yes. He thought about it when she showed up not in the practical bun but with her hair down, and he registered this in the way you register a shift in weather. Something that changes the quality of the air. He thought about it when she ordered the duck without looking at the price to him over dessert until he genuinely understood it, which nobody had managed before. He was deciding what she was. He knew. He was trying not to. He wasn't entirely succeeding. "You want me to fit a category," she said over coffee, reading him the way she read a chessboard. "You haven't figured out which one yet, so it's making you quiet. I'm always quiet. You're usually controlled. This is different." She turned her coffee cup in her hands. "I'm not the chess story, Rowan. I'm not the Cinderella thing. I'm just a person who ran out of time and money in the same month and had to make some adjustments." "I know that. Do you?" He met her eyes. "I'm trying to." It was possibly the most honest thing he'd said to anyone in several years. She seemed to know it. She didn't make a thing of it, just nodded slightly and changed the subject to something about the Flames' goaltending problems, which she had opinions about that were surprisingly well-reasoned. And Rowan felt something loosen in his chest that he hadn't known was tight. The problem with learning to want something honestly, he discovered, is that it makes you vulnerable to the people who understand your wanting and decide to use it. His older brother, Douglas Sinclair, not Douglas Fenwick from any other story, but his Douglas, the one who had always orbited the company from a distance, taking credit for proximity and contributing friction, called him in February. "I hear you're serious about this catering woman," Douglas said by way of greeting. "Her name is Madeline. I know her name. I also know her mother's medical bills, her student loan balance, and the fact that she turned down 2 job offers in the past year because neither paid enough to cover both." He paused. "I'm just wondering if she knows those details are the reason you found her interesting in the first place." "That's not." "You pulled her file, Rowan. You asked your coordinator to background her. You moved her into a building you own, and then acted surprised when she came back into your orbit." Douglas's voice was pleasant the way a closed door is pleasant. "I'm not saying she's after anything. I'm saying you built this whole thing on a power imbalance you pretended wasn't there. What happens when she finds out?" Rowan didn't answer. "I'll tell you what happens," Douglas said. "She leaves. Or worse, she stays, and she always wonders." He hung up and stood in his office for a long time, looking at the Calgary skyline going gray in the late afternoon. He thought about the building in Kensington. He thought about the coordinator, the background check, the manufactured coincidences at the coffee shop. He thought about Madeleine saying, "You're used to people saying yes, and I'm not interested in being someone's interesting deviation from routine." He thought about the 19 moves. He called her that evening and asked if he could come over. "It's 9 o'clock, she said. "I know. I need to tell you something, and if I wait until tomorrow, I'll talk myself into telling you a better version of it." A short pause. "That's either very honest or very alarming. Probably both." She opened the door in a sweater that had seen better years and reading glasses he hadn't known she wore. And he told her everything: the background check, the building, the coordinator, the engineered run-ins. All of it. He stood in her kitchen and said it plainly, without softening it, because she was the kind of person who would notice softening and it would be worse. When he finished, the apartment was quiet. Somewhere in the building, a door closed. "I knew about the building," she said finally. He blinked. "The lease is through Sinclair Property Group. It's on the document. I Googled you before the second gala." She took her glasses off and set them on the counter. "I wanted to see if you were the kind of person who'd mention it. You were testing me. I was gathering information." She looked at him steadily. "You failed the test, for the record. You never mentioned it." "No," he said. "I didn't." "Why not?" He thought about it seriously, the way she deserved. "Because I knew it would change things. And I didn't want things to change before I was sure they were worth keeping." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "That's honest, at least. I'm trying to be better at that, I know." She put her glasses back on. "I've been watching." He left at midnight. She didn't tell him to leave and she didn't tell him to stay. She let him find the door himself, which felt like the right kind of trust for where they were. Douglas's next move came in March, through a journalist at a business magazine who published a profile of Sinclair Capital that included, almost in passing, a mention of Rowan's growing interest in a young woman from his company's service staff, a college dropout who has been seen at several Sinclair events in recent months. It was 2 sentences. It was enough. Madeline texted him a link to the article at 7 in the morning with no message attached. He called Douglas first. I didn't write the article, Douglas said. You gave them the angle. I gave them facts. What they did with facts is on them. You did this to isolate her. Rowan's voice was very flat. You want her to feel humiliated enough to disappear because you think if I'm unhappy, I'll be more manageable. That is a very stupid calculation, Douglas. She's a distraction. She is the first person in 15 years who has told me the truth about myself without wanting something for it. He paused. That's not a distraction. That's the only thing actually worth my attention. There was a silence. Then Douglas said, You're going to blow up a $40 million acquisition over a woman you've known for 4 months. The acquisition is fine. The lawyer handling it is excellent. I've spoken to her this morning. He let that sit. And don't call her a woman. You know her name. He hung up and drove to Kensington. Madeline was at her kitchen table with the article open on her laptop and a cup of tea that had probably gone cold. She looked up when he came in. He'd called ahead this time. She'd left the door unlocked, which was its own kind of statement. College dropout, she said. You left a graduate program to care for your mother. That's not. I know what it is. She closed the laptop. I know the difference between what happened and how it reads. She looked at him. What I don't know is whether this is what it's going to be like. Because I don't need the story, Rowan. I don't need the press and the public and the being described as service staff in business magazines. I know. Do you, though? Because this is your life. This is what your life looks like from the outside. She turned the cold tea in her hands. I've been broke and I've been tired, and I've had to be very practical for a long time. I don't have the energy to also be someone's complication. You're not a complication. You're the clearest thing in my life right now. She looked at him for a long time. He didn't fill the silence. He was learning that sometimes the most important thing was to stop filling the silence. Your brother did this, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes. And you're going to let him keep working there. I'm going to restructure his role significantly. With legal documentation. He paused. And I'm going to issue a correction through the magazine's editor, who owes me a favor, which I will now be using for this rather than for something that would have made me money. Something moved through her expression. Not gratitude, exactly. Something more complicated than that. You should have told me about the building sooner, she said. I know. And the background check. Yes. And the coincidences. All of them, he said. I know. She picked up her cold tea, thought better of it, set it down. Do you want some tea? It's awful now, but I'm making more. Yes, said Rowan Sinclair, who had $2 billion and a penthouse in Eau Claire and had not had tea in approximately 15 years. Please. Summer arrived and the city opened up the way Calgary does in summer, suddenly and without apology, everyone spilling out onto patios and into the river pathways as though making up for lost months. Madeline had been conditionally readmitted to the actuarial science program at U of C in September. She'd applied in March, quietly, and told Rowan in May over takeout in his kitchen, which had become a place she moved through with the ease of someone who felt no need to perform comfort. I didn't tell you, she said, because I didn't want you to offer to do anything. I didn't offer. You were about to. He had been. He sat with that. Was I wrong to want to help? You're never wrong to want to help. You're sometimes wrong about what help is. She speared a piece of tofu. She'd been slowly introducing vegetables into his fridge. A project she denied was intentional. And looked at him. I needed to do this part myself. The application, the conversation with the department, the whole thing. If I come back as Rowan Sinclair's girlfriend, I come back as a story. I want to come back as a mathematician. You're both, yes, but I need to be the second one first. He thought about Clarissa's words from 8 months ago. You have a way of deciding what people should be, and then being surprised when there's something else. And he thought about the 19 moves, and he thought about the fact that Madeleine Voss had told him more true things about himself in 7 months than he'd managed to learn on his own in 38 years. Okay, he said. She looked at him like she'd expected an argument. Okay, I'll be insufferably proud of you from a respectful distance. She laughed, a real laugh, the kind that changed her whole face, and threw a fortune cookie at him, and he caught it. And the kitchen felt very small and very full at the same time. In August, they drove out to Kananaskis for a weekend. Just the two of them. No phones except for emergencies, staying in a cabin that he'd rented through a booking site, like a regular person, because, she'd said, please don't have someone at your company arrange it. I want it to feel normal. He had arranged it himself through the website and been mildly bewildered by the process, and hadn't told anyone about either of those things. They hiked to Rawson Lake on the Saturday and sat on rocks at the edge of the water for a long time without talking. The mountains were doing what they do, being enormous and indifferent and beautiful in a way that makes human concerns feel appropriately sized. "I owe you an apology," Rowan said. "Which one?" "You've accumulated a few, the whole first part of this." He looked at the water. "I built a situation that suited me and called it serendipity. I checked up on you, I manufactured reasons to be near you, and I pretended I was just someone who happened to keep running into a woman who interested me. That wasn't honest, and it wasn't fair, and it made you an object in my own story rather than a person in your own." Madeleine was quiet for a moment. A bird called from somewhere in the tree line. "You've been working on that speech," she said. "Since April. It's good, it's true." She picked up a flat stone and turned it in her fingers. "I knew you were doing it," she said. "Not all of it, not the whole picture, but I knew some of it wasn't coincidence, and I kept showing up anyway." She looked at him sideways. "That's not me excusing you. That's me telling you I made choices too. I wasn't a passive thing that happened to you. I know that. Then we're both accountable. That's probably healthier." She skipped the stone across the water, 4 bounces, clean, and watched it sink. "I'm not going to pretend the whole beginning was fine. It wasn't entirely fine. But I also think you've been trying to be different ever since I called you on it. And trying matters, even when you don't fully succeed, especially then." She stood up and brushed off her hiking pants. People who only try when they know they'll succeed aren't actually trying. He looked at her, the lake behind her, the mountains above that, the sky vast and Canadian and very blue. "I love you," he said. He had been working on that too, but it came out without the polish. Just the plain version. She looked at him for a moment that felt longer than it was. "I know," she said. Then, quieter, "Me too." The gala that fall was the biggest event Sinclair Capital had hosted in a decade. A charity benefit for the Calgary Foothills Hospital Foundation, 400 guests, the kind of event that showed up in the society pages the next morning. Rowan spent most of it near the bar, which was where he'd been standing when a champagne glass shattered at his feet 11 months ago. And he thought about that while a city councilor talked to him about infrastructure, and he made the appropriate noises in response. Madeleine was there as a guest, which she found slightly surreal and which he found completely correct. She wore dark green, and she'd actually done something different with her hair, and she was standing across the room talking to the chief of surgery at Foothills Hospital about cardiac outcomes, which he knew because he'd drifted close enough to hear before she caught him doing it and raised her eyebrows at him, and he drifted back. At some point in the evening, she appeared at his elbow. "There's a chess set over there," she said. He looked. In the corner, the same decorative board, different event, same club. "I know," he said. "You've been looking at it all night. I've been thinking about last year." She considered this. "You want a rematch?" "I want a lot of things," he said. "A rematch is one of them. I'd like to negotiate the terms." "What terms?" He looked at her. "If I win, you let me be embarrassingly supportive when you start the program in September." Define embarrassingly supportive. "I show up to your first day. With coffee. And I don't tell anyone except possibly everyone." She bit back a smile. "And if I win, you'd win in 17 moves this time," he said. "I've been 19 before. 17 now. You're getting better. You're teaching me things without meaning to. It's a very inefficient curriculum, but the retention rate is exceptional." He held out his hand. "Do we have a deal?" She looked at his hand for a moment, then at him. The room moved around them, voices and string music and the soft percussion of a successful evening, and she took his hand and shook it once, formal and real. "We have a deal," said Madeleine Voss. They played for 40 minutes. The room gradually stopped noticing and then gradually started noticing again. He lasted 23 moves before she found the line he'd left open in the center. The same structural problem Clarissa had once pointed out in his professional life, he realized. Too much protection in the wrong places, and he tipped his king over himself before she had to do it. "Better," she said. "I'll get there. Eventually." She started resetting the board with the automatic efficiency of someone who resets things often. "You're still protecting your queen too early." "Maybe," he said. "I'm protecting the right things now, and I just need to adjust which pieces." She looked up at him over the board. "That was either a chess comment or a metaphor," she said. "Yes." She set the last piece in place, a slow and deliberate motion, and then she sat back and looked at him across the board in the low, warm light of the atrium, and she said nothing at all, which was sometimes the best answer to everything.